I've said this before, but it bears repeating before this particular show. A lot of producers, when they start doing things, they'll put on a mask. They'll put on a funny hat or a jacket, a scarf, goggles, whatever it takes in order to create a persona, sort of an avatar. So it's protection. It's a shield between themselves and any criticism. I don't do that. What you see is what you get here. So with that in mind, this is going to be part catharsis, part warning, but it will be completely honest. So last episode I talked about the idea of when the wheels come off, and I said it was different than Burnout. So this week we're talking about Burnout, but the only way I can do so honestly is outside of gaming. I've experienced burnout in paintball. I mean, after 23 years of playing, I walked away. There were a lot of factors, but basically extreme burnout. I'm going to try to shy away from my history in paintball because frankly it doesn't serve the topic, but I am speaking from first-hand experience here. Now, as I mentioned last episode, falling apart mid-event does happen, but this is a long-term kind of thing. Burnout is the response to long-term stress, and people are going to laugh and saying, how could gaming be stressful? Well, you need to beat the game faster, you need to make more DPS, your healer needs to not let anyone die, the tank needs to grab everything, the raid needs to be faster, faster, faster. You make any mistake and it's met from being cut from the raid or from the instance or from the guild. Perfection is not good enough. You need to sacrifice your weekends and your evenings. Oh, you spent the night offline? You get demoted. You're putting in 20, 30, 50 hours a week just to keep up with the games being released so you're not left behind. If you haven't beat that Friday release yet, oh, you're a loser. I one time asked on Twitter if hardcore gamers were happy and nobody actually came into their defense to say that they were. Okay, yeah, sure, nobody's holding a gun to your head and demanding that you play video games, but there is a thing called soft pressure. We'll get to that in a little bit here. So, what causes burnout? I mean in a larger sense. The first thing you need to do is talk about stress. Now, you gotta think of stress as like a daily challenge. Now, when you see it that way, stress is not bad. It keeps you on your toes. And there's a feeling of achievement when you finish something. The problem becomes when you have excessive stress. And yeah, we're gamers, so it's really easy to get overwhelmed because, you know, I got this, right? I know people who will raid nightly because I got this. I know somebody who would come home from work every day with a bag of McFood and he would start into the 4 to 5 hour raid grind every night because the guild needs me. I got this. Night after night, they need you to tank, they need you to heal, they need you to range DPS. And all the while, the demands just keep on growing. And all this while, you're saying, I got this, while you're complaining about other people not trying hard enough. And okay, I'm hitting several factors here, but basically that's how it happens. It's not just the one thing. It's all these little things that just keep on growing and growing and growing. And you feel like you can't say no, because you know exactly what's going to happen if you do. To kind of give an anecdotal thing here, this came from one of my friends from one of his guilds. The conversation in chat was the raid leader saying, come on and join us. My friend said, no, I'm about to log off. I want to do something with my friends tonight. And then he got an alert saying that he had been demoted to the lowest possible level and the raid leader was chastising him for not being a team player. This is that soft pressure that I had mentioned before. They're not going to directly tell you the guild is mother, the guild is father, but they will demonstrate time and time again that if you choose anything over the guild, you will be punished. You basically have just lost control of your gaming experience, and you're giving it up for a promise. And you might be saying, well, why would people stay if the conditions are so bad? Because, well, you know, human nature. We're social creatures, and, you know, we're going to stick to the social group. I mean, these are my friends. They might do bad things, but they're still my friends. And we kind of figure, well, they're in my guild, so the guild is there for me, right? Even if the guild is, kind of bad. All of this assuming that you actually get any rewards promised to you in the first place. That's another thing that leads to burnout. You put in so much effort and so much energy, and you invest a part of yourself into the game, and the rewards just stop. You grind for days or for weeks just to get a single armor piece that's going to be worthless come next expansion, not to mention fatigue issues. In a game where you can just get tired of failure and repetition, you know, outside the game, your sleep schedule is just getting hosed and your work and your school is getting affected. All of these things lead down the road to burnout. For every individual it's going to be a little bit different, but it's basically like I described, where you lose control, where you get so much pressure to succeed, the rewards stop flowing, whatever it is. And once it hits, once you get to that point, you just throw up the defenses. When I was doing research into this, I've read a lot of articles that read like a who's who of gamers. Gamers in the mid stages of burnout can be angry, they could just not enjoy the game, they're pessimistic, they're emotionally detached, they're incredibly irritable, they're lacking in productivity and performance. Does this sound familiar to anybody yet? Yeah. In the last few years of playing paintball, I was well beyond this stage. and I was going through the motions. I mean, for example, every game begins with the referee calling the start. And for most people, they spend that 5 to 10 seconds thinking about their opening move, where they're going to go, and I'm spending it thinking, why the hell am I here? I don't want to be here. Most of the time I got eliminated is because I just didn't care, because, I mean, I was cranking out 3 paintball shows a week, I was doing the local circuit of big games, I was spending pretty much my last penny to do this, and people kept demanding more. One shining example is when I actually got virtually yelled at for not attending an event because I was going to a family emergency. And the whole time I was doing it with almost no support. So, to give an example, nobody would sponsor the show that I did back in 2004 because, as one company put it, there's no future in internet video. Yeah, wow, they sure showed me, didn't they? My paintball burnout began in about the year 2000 or so. And I spent the next 13 years in basically denial. I was thinking, well, you know, it's got to turn around sometime. It never does. But I think that's partially by design. Something of interest. In the paintball realm, the burnout rate is 3 to 5 years, and that's from the first time you've ever played to throwing all your gear in a trash can. Considering the target demo is the suburbanite 15 to 18-year-old whose parents have money, yeah, it's kind of easy to see why. But when I was into it, paintball was very good at chewing you up and spitting you out while grinding all of your money out of you, and I see it happening in gaming too. Again, this is just speaking from my experience here. The paintball burnout was because the emphasis was ranking up in the competitions as fast as possible. If you played recreational ball more than once, well, there was soft pressure from everybody to get into local tournaments because that's the only way you can really test your skills. Someone actually said that to me once. And the top-end gear was necessary to play at any level because it makes a good player better. Yeah, somebody said that to me too. Then you move on to your regionals, and maybe you get into amateurs, and you're trying to get good enough to get on the pro teams. Meanwhile, you're spending thousands of dollars pursuing the Gear of the Week club or getting on the circuit, and you're just getting angry and frustrated because you're being sold an empty promise that's never going to happen. So yeah, burning players out was just seemingly part of the business model. Because, let's face it, you make a lot more money on new players just jumping in than you do on experienced players who, yeah, it's just sick. I see this happening too in gaming, but in a much more sick way, because between the Skinner box techniques and the Stockholm syndrome and a couple other things, gamers just can't turn away. Gamers getting burned out, it's not just the status quo, it's celebrated. So I suppose this is where we would begin the how to avoid burnout segment of the show, and actually when I was reading all the research about this, I was laughing because, okay, most of the research is talking about how not to burn out from work. You're not supposed to burn out on the things you find fun. And yet, well, we're gamers, and you've seen these people. You ever heard that one guy screaming about how everybody else on their team is a noob? He's on the path to burnout if he's not there already. And if you turn on your computer every day and go, oh great, I gotta do my dailies, guess what? You're on the path too. So I read all the research and all the pro advice, and here's what I came up with. Now mind you, I'm not an expert, but this is what I can see working if you think you're on that burnout path. So let's start at the beginning, recognizing you're on the path. Are you snapping at your team? Are you thinking to these people, stop wasting my time, or I've got better things to do than babysit these noobs? When you finish a raid, are you fist pumping and screaming awesome, or are you saying, oh thank dog that's over? Are you feeling hopeless or apathetic? Or you just want to just push through the night, or something kind of, you know, are you even having fun? I ask this because gamers are stubborn. That's a good way to put it. I've actually said to people, are you having fun? I'm like, yeah, I'm having fun, screw you! Kind of crossing your messages there. So let's start by taking back some control. A lot of burnout comes from feeling like you have no agency. Things like, well, I'd like to go do this old raid, but the guild needs to tank this new raid that we've done 20 times already, and so when somebody else needs an armor piece, well, you're losing control of your game. You got to take that back. First, you can start by just saying no. Okay, that sounds really simple, and how often have you played and somebody said, oh, just come on, a little bit more, or you ever been like grinding and thinking you'd rather be sorting your socks, or someone on your guild says, oh, come on, it's just going to be a 30-minute raid, you can sleep later, or we need you to tank this. You can say no. And if they punish you for your decision, well, hell with them. And yeah, you can say no to a single-player game too. You just save the game, turn it off, and well, if you have to, just set limits, like I'm only going to play for 2 hours tonight, and that's it. If you start snapping at people, you're getting growly or just feeling like that, oh, that funk, just stop. And yeah, I can hear you hardcore people saying, well, it's not always possible. Okay, yeah. If everyone is counting on you, you just can't just leave. So, okay, if you need a break, just say, guys, I need 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Take time, regroup, come back. Then after the raid, turn off the computer, walk away. A lot of these sites say you should take a vacation or take up a hobby, which is kind of rich for gaming burnout because, you know, this is supposed to be the hobby. Instead, step back a second and ask yourself, what are you expecting out of this game? You know, one of the themes that I kept on reading about from players when they were talking about Burnout was that they would roll a new tune on a new server and play them up without the guild pressure. So that tells me that there's something that's just missing from your main character. There's something there that you want something more out of the game than what you already have. So if you're doing this, you need to seriously question what you want out of your main and start moving towards that. If your hobby makes you miserable, it's time to get a new hobby. For some reason, gamers have embraced this burnout state as normal. You know, just keep pushing through it. It'll get better. Let me give you a spoiler alert from experience. It never really does. Honestly, the whole paintball thing, I don't miss it. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, there were some good times and I made some lifelong friends, but by the time that it was pretty much over and done with, there's just nothing left for me. But the only thing I really miss is the adventure. Somewhat. And that whole punchline is going to be relying on the fact that people are going to realize what this is. And the right people will know.